Morning. Chapter 15. Yes, my hood's on because, yes, I'm cold. It's cold, and I forgot to, I turned the heat up and then wait for it to get warm before I got up. Chapter 15. It was 1:20. Just 4 more hours or so, and it would begin to be light again. Emily was anxious to see land, to see her goal, and to keep a lookout for the rescue boats. It was so typical of Indonesia that there were no boats yet, wasn't it? Someone in an office somewhere was making the decision, slowly, importantly, while she was swimming, blundering in the dark toward land she couldn't see. This puffed up official was probably at that moment considering whether it was too dark, or whether the seas were too rough, which of course they weren't, or maybe the boats were out there already, but looking in the wrong place. The wrong bloody place, Emily said, thinking of how Richard would say it. He'd find some way to laugh at it, to make a joke, and take the edge off the nervousness. I wish you guys were here, she said to Richard and Catherine, wherever they were. She put her lips in the water and blew out to make bubbles, the way she did as a 6 year old when she had been learning to put her face in the water. She had been in the Minnow League and the YMCA swimming team. She hated swim practice. She hated swim meets. The pool was so cold that she had to work up her courage just to get in it. And the coach, well, his name was the coach as far as she ever knew. He had been a former Olympic swimmer who had never won any medals. Hey, Slake, he would say, loud enough for everyone to hear. Are you a rock or a fish? A fish, coach, she would reply dutifully, though she felt like a rock. What kind of fish, Slake? A minnow. So get in there and swim like a minnow. Under the scrutiny of her teammates, she'd have no choice but to jump into the frigid water and swim, like a rock, masquerading as a fish. She blew some more bubbles. The warm water felt surprisingly smooth on her soft lips. She wished she could drink it. She was thirsty, and she was probably getting dehydrated with all this swimming. When was the last time she'd had a drink? It was on the dock, she remembered. She'd had enough money for an avocado drink called an es alpucat, one of her favorites, and a safe thing to buy off a cart if you were afraid of food poisoning. It was made with coffee essence, palm sugar, and condensed milk. It was delicious and sweet. Well, why can't she just drink the water where she's swimming? Emily wished she had some now, but caffeine was probably not the right thing to drink when she was dehydrated. Lemonade. Maybe. Really icy, she said out loud. No, just cold water in a frosty plastic bottle. Yeah, and tons of plain rice, some vegetables, and a big fat baranang fish. What was she thinking? Not fish. Not while she was dragging herself through an ocean. Meat, she said with satisfaction. Meat loaf. Mashed potatoes, peas, chocolate milk. Now you're cooking, Emily. She stopped to tread water. She untied her leggings from her camisole strap and blew them up. Then she looked at her watch. 1:45. She yawned, a huge lung cleanser of a yawn, an alarming yawn because it reminded her of how tired she was. Could people ever get so tired that they would fall asleep while swimming? Would her brain quickly wake her to stop her from drowning if she accidentally nodded off? I've had enough, she said. Then she looked up at the sky. The stars were twinkling. She closed her eyes. She had never prayed before. Each time she had been in a church, it was as a tourist, admiring the architecture and religious art with her parents from a purely historical point of view. Dear God, can you help me? I shouldn't have run away. Why didn't I just go home and cry? Yes, I was stupid. So is this my punishment? If so, it seemed harsh, she decided. Are most gods harsh or loving, she wondered. Do you hear me, God? If you're there and you're listening, I've had enough. Was there some point you were trying to make with all this? Is it a wonderful life kind of thing? Because if it is, I get the point. She started to swim again, holding the inflated leggings. What was Jimmy Stewart? What was it that he had said at the end of that movie when he was tired of seeing what the world would have been like if if his character George Bailey hadn't been born? And what were all those awful things that had happened in the world without George Bailey? This is good trivia to keep my mind going, Emily thought. Okay, without George, the town had been taken over by Old Potter, and Potter had changed the town's name to Pottersville. Shoot, what was the name before that? Let's see. It was Falls something. No, Bedford Falls. That's it. And George's wife had become a spinster, and his beautiful old house had decayed, and his four cute kids had never been born. Oh, yes. And without George there to save him, his brother had died as a child, and the transport of soldiers his brother had saved during the war had died, and his uncle had gone into a nut house. What were George's kids' names? One was Zuzu, because they had been given the rose petals, Zuzu's petals. The others were Tommy and Petey and a girl. Can't remember. And so, anyway, there was George on a bridge in the snow with his wet hair falling into his face, whispering the lesson he'd learned from seeing that terrible outcome of a world without George Bailey. I want to live again. I want to live again, Emily said out loud, quoting George Bailey on the bridge. She sighed, a long, deep sigh. What was the oldest girl's name in the movie? She was playing Hark the Herald Angels Sing over and over again on the piano, practicing for a recital, and George yelled at her by name. What was the name? Janie, Emily blurted out loud. That's it. Janie, she thought. In the movie, George yelled, Haven't you learned that silly tune yet? You keep playing the same thing over and over. And then Janie cried because her dad was angry at her. Emily heard faint crying floating around her, like mist hanging over a pond. Was she imagining it? I'm losing my mind, she said, shaking her head to clear the sound. But it was real. There was crying somewhere near her. She stopped and listened intently. It was coming from her left, but from far away. She began to swim, quietly, in the direction of the sound. It became louder so slowly she had to concentrate to keep on track. After a few minutes of swimming in the dim blue light ahead of her, she began to see a dark blob, a sobbing blob of something. As she approached, she saw by the shape of the shadow that it was a small person. She swam closer. It was a child. A few more strokes. It was a boy. Now she was near him. It was the boy. Her boy. It was the waif she'd shoved into a life vest on the ferry. Oop, that's the end of that chapter. We'll have to wait till tomorrow.